Hello and welcome to the gallery. My name is Jon and today we're gonna paint up some bases for Khorne. Now, as you can guess by the start of this video will be a little bit different. Main thing is, I will not be showing my face in this video. I am sad to tell you for the fair few that like my mustache for some reason, but I will be just doing a little bit of a voiceover. The reason for this is because I am changing up my entire setup at home, and I will show you everything around that next week. So, in lieu of that, we will just have it simple and we'll do some bases. Now, why bases for Khorne? Well, the reason is the new World Eater models. And I like these models and I'm getting a fair few of them, so you will see them be cropping up quite a lot over the next few weeks. But first I wanted to figure out what kind of base I want to put them on, because sometimes I like to build the base and the model on top of it before I paint, which is quite a simple way to do it, and therefore I want to start working on the bases first and figure out how I want them to be themed. Now, the main idea I had is to keep them quite muted, quite dark, full of skulls and full of blood, because Khorne. But the reason for why I wanted them muted is because the World Eaters have this brassy red tone which is quite profound, and I think this will contrast well with the actual models. But we're gonna start with something a little bit simple but looks kind of cool, and I'm gonna dub this Blackened Blood. Now we're gonna start by using some texture paste, and you can buy this in hobby stores and craft shops and everything like that. It's basically just thick paint with a little bit of sand in it. You can of course use some GW or Vallejo paint that is simple, some sort of texture paste, but this is the cheapest way to get it because you get a big jar of it for the same price as a little tub. So we're putting that on about half to 70% of the base. Then of course we're gonna have to add some skull once that dries. And skulls are simple. I'm just gonna put a little bit of bone white or any off-white that you have really on the skull, or then skeleton horde or agrax or strong tone or whatever, some sort of dark brown wash on top of that skull afterwards. Now, for the next bit, I'm going to paint a little bit of red on all the base where I didn't put the texture paint. And this will be a nice base before we put some blood effect on it. Mainly because if we put it straight on the base or on some black thing, it'll be quite dark and it won't be as vibrant. Now, once the red paint is dry, we're going to put some blood for the blood god on top of the red paint, and it will be quite vibrant there. Let that dry completely, but while it's drying, you can always dry brush the texture paint that you put down with a little bit of dark gray, and then a little bit of light gray on top of that. Simple enough. Now, the blood effect is dry. And here's where the weird thing is going to happen. I'm going to take some Morton earth, and I'm going to put it around all the blood effects, but keeping a little bit away from the skull, so the skull will have some blood around it. Now, once that has dried, then it'll crack up, and it won't have this lava field, but it'll feel like this cracked earth on top of disturbed blood, which is kind of cool. Now, once it dries, I'm going to put more blood, and a lot of it here and there, pooling around. Of course, you can add more skulls or whatever you feel like, and you got this really blackened blood type base. I really dig this base, and I feel like this will be quite likely to be the base I will use going forward, mainly because of its simplicity. It's quick to do, it's just drying times, and if you're doing maybe 20 berserkers or something like that, this is no problem whatsoever. Next, we're going to do something a little bit more for boarding action or fighting inside a spaceship or on some planet or in the city or something like that. Something a little bit more urban and more techy. I'm going to call this Boarding Berserker. We'll start with some wire mesh, and I don't really care where you get this from. You can find it willy-nilly here and there. Just have to be careful where you're looking for it. Just kept some fine wire mesh and you're good to go. I'm gonna glue that about half on the base. Half the base is gonna have this on it. And then I'm gonna put some plastic card or cardboard, really. I'm using an old corner cut from a Warhammer packet. And I'm just putting that here and there, making some sort of planks or some sort of actual groove in between or something like that. And then a little bit of a thin strip on top, just to make some difference between the wire mesh and the plate that is underneath. Adding a little bit of super glue and some baking soda just to rough it up a little bit, and then a little bit of texture paint even to rough it up more, just to get some more interest into the base. And then of course we're gonna add a skull. Now for this thing, it's not like the other thing where it's basically primed-ish from the get-go. This has a lot of metallic bits, which are actual metals, so we're gonna prime it in black. And then we're gonna paint all the metallic bits with some dark metallic paint. And this is basically everything on the base except the skull. Then of course it's good to have a little bit of accent to it. So I'm gonna put some bronze paint on the line. You can do it wherever you want. You can make the entire floor bronze. Will work well with World Eaters, but it might not be as striking. After that, we're gonna paint the skull like we did before in an off-white beigey type of color, but we're gonna hold back with shading it for a little bit. Next, it's some typhus corrosion here and there, willy-nilly. We're gonna thin it with water, just so it flows a little bit better, mixes a little bit better with what we already have there. And then the entire thing is getting a wash of Agrax or strong tone or whatever, some brown wash like before. Just, it doesn't really matter what type of paint you are using, just that you follow this brown wash thing, because it will tone it down and make it a little bit more used and grimy and dirty and everything like that. Afterwards, dry brush the entire thing with some silver, not overly too much, just a little bit to catch the typhus corrosion and everything like that. And it's good to throw some ricer rust as well in there, just to give it some rust effects. You can of course just do this with some orange thinned out paint, but I have this ricer rust dry paint, so why not use it? And of course adding a lot of blood. And then you have this interesting but quite simple, it's not a Necromunda style basis, but it's quite close, and you did it for no money whatsoever. It's made from trash, basically. The next one is going to be quite a lot different. It's not going to have this dark, moody tone of the cracked earth with the blood underneath. It's not going to have this tacky look. It's going to be more in the battlefield kind of thing. And I'm going to call this Fields of Death. The main thing here is to add a lot of texture, a lot of different texture that will simulate ground. I'm starting out with a little bit of small rocks that I collected months and years ago in a little tub, and I'm just gonna glue them here and there and leave them to dry. And I'm also gonna put some ground texture that I got from Army Painter. It's quite nice. It's just this coarse little, almost like coffee grains, and I'm just gonna put that on top and leave that to dry as well. Now, the best thing with these things is to, once they're dried, get some more of that glue that you already put on, add a lot of water into it, and give it a thorough brush of this. It'll tie it better down. It won't come off as easily. Next, we're gonna put some skulls on it and broken up cork to simulate bigger rocks, and some broken toothpick ends just to give it some Khorne-ish spikes here and there, and it looks, well, somewhat okay. Now let's prime the whole damn thing in black. We're gonna start with the same like we did with the Blackened blood, the texture there. We're gonna dry brush with dark gray, and then a little bit of light gray, and then to give it a little bit of extra flavor, we're gonna also use some warm-ish color like pallid witch flesh or something like that, something almost white but with a slight yellow hint to it. And we're gonna dry brush that as the last thing, mainly on the rocks though. Now we're going to paint the skulls in the off-white and everything like that, like we've done before, and paint all the spikes that are coming from the ground in dark metallic. What dark metallic? You choose. It doesn't really matter. Like I said, in this video, I'm not throwing out any names, but Blood for the Blood God is quite good, I must admit. Now we're going to shade all the spikes and the skulls with some brown toned wash. Next, we're going to add some wire to it, something to simulate razor wire or something like that. I'm using razor wire from Army Painter, but you can use just basically any wire you want. The razor wires looks good, but you can use a very thin guitar string by all I care. I'm wrapping it around the end of a Q-tip. It will hold the look quite well, and this is the about right diameter that I want. Then I'm just sliding it off, dipping it into some super glue and plopping it on the base. Now the thing to get this base looking quite more realistic, because it's a little bit just dry brushed stuff at this point, is using pigment powders. I'm using umber, which is a brownish color, and some gray smoky color, which is quite nice. It's about 20 to 30% umber against the grey top tone, and that is just gonna be put willy-nilly here and there just to give it some dust, some old look to the base. Now after that, what do you think we're gonna do? That's right, we're gonna add a lot of blood for the blood god, because blood for the blood god. And once that is done, we have this quite interesting fields of death base, and I think this might look quite cool, not only for these Khorne guys, but for most actual things that are going to be in the field. Top of my head, Iron Warriors, something like that. Now, thank you very much for joining me here today. There are links in the description for all kinds of stuff. Social media, the Amazon store, the Patreon, by all means, check that out. And various tidbits. You do with it what you will, as per usual. Like, share, and subscribe, but most importantly, let the colors flow. But until next time, farewell.